Hey weirdos, this is Evan Jarvix with Make Oklahoma Weirder, and this is your local music vlog of the week. It is Friday morning as I'm recording this, probably Friday at some time as you're watching this, and that's how I'm going to describe all the events to you in that time frame. Which is to say, when I say it's tonight, it's Friday night. And tonight, there's going to be a show at, there's tons of shows. Tonight, tomorrow night. I do really want to point out real quick, Kendall's Bar has a show tonight, and it's like a metal themed show. I don't know how it got booked. I don't know whose idea it was, but I kind of want to go just to see it. Kendall's Bar is in Oklahoma City. It's kind of on May, like near the fairgrounds almost. It's a tiny little country bar. Like, I've been there a couple times. All I ever really see there are like singer-songwriters. I haven't really seen much in the way of full bands. It tends to be like cover artists, people who kind of have some twang. And yeah, there's going to be some metal. There's a band coming out from Texas, and they're getting support from some really good local bands. And I haven't gotten to see any of them before, so I may actually try and make this thing. The locals are Discordia, who I'm a big fan of. Big fan of their recordings. They came out with a new EP earlier this year called Binge Purge. Binge is track 1 and Purge is track 2, and it's about 20 minutes long. There's Deathbox is playing, and then Broken Flesh, I believe, is playing. And I haven't seen any of them before, so I may try and catch that. And if nothing else, it'll just be fun to see that happen in like this old, pool hall style. Like, I don't know. It's interesting where metal shows get to happen these days. Rest in peace to Thunder Alley. I never made it out there, but I know they had a lot of stuff out there. And since, venues like that have kind of fallen away, it feels like 89th Street's the only place that really has these kind of shows anymore. Aside from like the obscurities like this, and like I've mentioned the dojo before, where it's like stuff literally happens at a dojo. They'll play anywhere, Anyway. Yeah, got off on a sidetrack there. I gotta talk about Ester Drang, if anything else. Ester Drang's a big deal, and it took me a little while to come around to find that out. But I started listening to them a few years back and started to realize, wow, this is an Oklahoma band that like happened like in the 2000s, and I had no idea. There's so many things that I'm always playing catch up on. But if you haven't heard of Ester Drang, please catch up. They kind of rode that post-rock wave of the 2000s, for a good while. And, I don't know anything really more than that other than like having heard a couple of their albums. There is a Pitchfork review out there of one of their albums, Infinite Keys, I think it was called, something like that. And like at the end, it got like a 6 point something. You know how Pitchfork is. But, yeah, like, they had to like go so far as to compare them to Sigur Rós to like actually say something, particularly negative about them. And it's like, well, they're not as good as these other bands. Well, yeah. Anyway. But they were a big enough deal to get reviewed by Pitchfork, if that tells you anything. Yeah, they've been on hiatus for like a long time. They're having like this big comeback album that's like the first thing they've done in over a decade, I think, to my knowledge. And, it's kind of been in the works for a while. I know I saw them at, Norman Music Fest a couple years ago, and they did this show in the Sooner Theater. It was spectacular. And, I remember they introduced a couple new songs, and they were different. They were kind of in a different direction. So I'm really excited to finally hear the album and see what they've been working on. I have not heard the album yet, but I will definitely be looking into it. That album is being released on vinyl through our new local vinyl label that I have not talked about yet. For the past 2 months, even though I probably should have, because they've been putting stuff out, and they've been a thing now for a little while. This guy runs this label called Clerestory AV or something like that, and they've got this local music series that's been going, where it's kind of like an A-side, B-side single thing with two artists. It's not that much different from the Old Blood Noise Endeavors thing that went on, where they had that tape series, if you remember that, from a couple years back. The Old Blood Noise slash, they collaborated with somebody else to put out these cassette tapes. But this is kind of the same spirit of that, but on vinyl, which is really nice. The first two artists were Samantha Crane and John Calvin Abney. And then, yeah, they actually just had a show, I think, last week at the Chouse in Norman, which is a really cool venue. They hardly ever have shows there. But it's an old venue that used to be a church. And it's run by like a guy who lives there or something. But anyway, the second one got put out recently, and it's Talos and Husbands, who have been, a really big deal as well. Husbands have been pretty consistent over the years about just constantly putting music out. Talos has kind of been in a bit of a lull here lately because just the individual members have been pursuing their own individual things, kind of apart from the band. But there's a new Talos track out there. And Talos and Husbands are both going to be opening for Ester Drang at the show this weekend. So it all kind of comes full circle. And that's going to be happening at the ACM UCO Performance Lab, which is happening on Saturday. And that's a really big deal. Yeah, it's also a big deal that just the Performance Lab is having shows again anyway. Because the Performance Lab kind of, they didn't shut down necessarily, but they just kind of stopped having shows there for a good while. Really wouldn't book anything. I'm not privy to the specifics, but I know something happened that kind of disabled them from being able to do that. But apparently they've got everything fixed to where they can have shows again. And it looks like they're really, really starting to book a lot of shows there now. Lots of touring acts, lots of local acts. They've got this thing called the Metro Music Series going on, which I think is a spin on the Metro Music Fest that they have every year in Bricktown. So it's nice to see ACM at UCO kind of making use of that lab again. I got to talk Halloween. I had to write down some of these. I'm not going to get to all this, but there's a lot of shows happening this weekend. Before I get there, real quick, I got to mention Lucky, which is the new album from Carter Sampson. That's dropping, well, it's already out, actually. I mean, it's this weekend. But the official release show is tonight at the Blue Door. And Carter Sampson, of course, an amazing singer-songwriter. There's lots of resources for you to find out about her. I know she was recently on that Grand Casino local music series they have going on. And of course, also Rock and Roll Camp for Girls, etc. Her last album, Wilder Side, was one of my favorites of 2016. I thought it was beautifully bittersweet and really thoughtful and mature about things that sometimes get simplified, and folk is always the best way to address those sort of things, folk music. And yeah, anyway, Carter Sampson dropping that album, don't want to miss that. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Now, with like a minute left, a ton of Halloween shows happening. Tonight, you've got Me Oh My having their big kind of comeback show, which, I mean, they've only been gone for a few months, but they've been working on new material. They've got a show down in Norman at the Resonator, which is a cool spot. They've got it's a Halloween show. They've got a new music video out, so check out Me Oh My's new music video. Their openers, there's 4 openers. I don't have time to talk about everybody. Spookapalooza is happening tomorrow. That's a Vibin Records thing. I've talked about Vibin before. Still haven't really acquainted myself with the new artists that are on that bill. Foxboroughs, the Nims, and Sophia Massid. Tonight at the Speakeasy, they're having a Halloween show. And then we've got Skalloween, which is happening tomorrow night at a house venue. And that is Elephancy and the Big News doing ska music. And then somewhere in the middle of all this, Original Flow's having a house show somewhere. I don't know. It's nuts.